What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. And first things first, you guys could probably see a little bit different on the screen here. We have all the topics we're going to be talking about on the left side of the screen. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. Keeping track of what we talk about in each episode and stuff, which is pretty cool. Keeps things a little bit more organized. I like the new graphics and stuff, and I hope you guys do too. So yeah. That's that. I'm excited for the new logo and everything, which is all pretty cool. I think it's time to modernize it a little bit, and change some things up a little bit, and that's what I wanted to do. So I did it. But yeah, let's just get started. The Commanders' offensive coordinator update to begin this one. Quite a few things happened progressing through this offensive coordinator interviewing and bringing in people to be interviewed for the Commanders' offensive coordinator role. We'll start things off here. The Commanders have interviewed former Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn, who is now on the San Francisco 49ers as their running backs coach, I want to say. I think that's what it is. I could be wrong, but I think that's what he does in San Francisco. But the Commanders have brought him in and have interviewed him for the offensive coordinator role. Also, the Commanders have requested to interview Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, who has also been requested by the Titans and the Ravens and was requested by the New York Jets as well before the Jets brought in Nathaniel Hackett for their offensive coordinator position. So that is something as well. Bieniemy, he's had a lot of head coaching interviews over these last few years, and he's turned out to be, or at least there's been rumors that he's not that great of an interviewer. So we'll see what happens there, but I would not be opposed to bringing in Eric Bieniemy. I think Bieniemy, again, his contract with the Kansas City Chiefs is ending after the season. I know the Chiefs have just advanced to the Super Bowl, but his contract with them will be expiring after the Super Bowl game. So that is also something to note, is that he can really go to any team he wants, any team that's willing to offer him. So that is also something to bring up. Another thing to bring up is that Albert Breer, who is a reporter, basically just a freelance reporter, I want to say. He might work for a company, but he said on the Commanders' offensive coordinator search, it's hard for a candidate with options to look at it, and referring to the Commanders, and not have the fear that a single season as offensive coordinator in Washington could wind up leading to a career setback. And I could not agree with him. I could not say no to that statement, because he is 100% true. And this has been something that I've been thinking about for the last few weeks, ever since we did fire Scott Turner, who, again, Turner, great guy. I do think Washington needs a change. He's not a bad coordinator at all. I think he's probably about average, but he does have some high upside. Did make some questionable decisions this year. I think it was time to get rid of him for a fresh start. Not because he was bad, which he still kind of was, made some questionable decisions, but more it was just time for, a fresh start. So again, not opposed to Scott Turner leaving at all or getting fired. I think it was needed. Again, Scott Turner, though, he is a above average, I'll say slightly above average to average offensive coordinator in the NFL. There's a lot of guys right now that are hired that are worse than Scott Turner. I'm just going to say that. So, yeah, we need a pretty good, if we're trying to upgrade from Scott Turner, we need a big guy that will be able to, that has a lot of experience and that will be able to lead this team to a better offense than what Scott Turner did this year with this offense. And Eric Bieniemy is definitely a guy that I would say I talked about a little bit in some of the past episodes, but some of the offensive coordinators or some coaches that are getting a lot of offensive coordinator hype, like Thomas Brown, who's the tight end coach in LA, some of those big names like that, they're looking at the Washington position, and there's just so much uncertainty with a possible new owner coming in this offseason. He might even fire Ron Rivera in like April or May, possibly, depending on who the new owner is and what the new owner wants to do. So there's a big question there if the new owner comes in. And then possibly in the middle of next season, Ron Rivera could be gone, because we know Ron Rivera, he likes to get off to not so great starts to the season. He's gone 1-4. He's gone like 2-3. He's gone 1-5 before in these last few years. It's just been a bunch of bad records to begin the year. And I think that he could definitely get fired by week 6, week 7 of the upcoming season, depending on what our record is. So There's a lot of uncertainty there. I think the only reason why Eric Bieniemy would be willing to come to Washington over a place like Baltimore or Tennessee is because he is trying to boost his name. Because, in my opinion, I feel like Andy Reid has had enough with Bieniemy. Bieniemy, not a bad offensive coordinator, but we got to remember in Kansas City, Andy Reid, Big Red, is calling the plays over there for the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. It's not Eric Bieniemy. Bieniemy needs some help, or not needs some help, but needs some experience calling plays himself. And I think Washington could be a good spot for that because we all know Ron Rivera isn't going to be calling those offensive plays. He's a defensive minded head coach. So bringing in Bieniemy would be great because Bieniemy would be calling plays. That's a boost for himself. He now gains more experience calling plays, and it would be his first experience too. Also, if Ron Rivera does get fired in the middle of next season or at the end of next season, Bieniemy has the chance of getting promoted. He knows the people in the front office. He knows the owner, whether it be Snyder or whether it be someone else that comes in like Bezos or Josh Harris or John Harris this offseason as well. So we know that he's going to have those connections in the building already. So definitely, especially if he wants a head coaching role, Washington could be a place to go and get like an extra boost on the competition that Washington might want to interview for a head coaching role that could possibly come available at the end or towards the end of next season. So yeah, that's it for the offensive coordinator stuff. If I had to make a prediction, I still think Ken Zampese, the quarterback coach for Washington, seems like Rivera likes him a lot. He seems also like the front runner, but I wouldn't expect us to hire a new offensive coordinator until we do get the chance of interviewing Bieniemy, which is going to really cut it close to the opening of free agency, which is March 15th. The Super Bowl is February 12th, I think, or February 13th. So we'll about a week or so after the Super Bowl, sometime in the week following the Super Bowl, we're going to interview Eric Bieniemy. Unless we interview Eric Bieniemy this week, which also is a chance now that I'm thinking about it, because they get 2 weeks in between the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. So that is also a chance of something that could happen. So we could actually have offensive coordinator by the Super Bowl, but if I had to make a guess, I don't think we will. And if we do, my guess will be Ken Zampese because Rivera likes him and he just seems like the front runner. Again, would not be like a better guy than Scott Turner. Run a very similar offense than Scott Turner. That Scott Turner ran with the Commanders. Ken Zampese would run a very similar offense like that one. So would not really be an upgrade, but again, it's someone at least. So if I had to make a prediction now, I think it'd still be Zampese, the quarterback coach. But again, if I could say who I want it to be, it would probably be Bieniemy because I think it would be like a mutual thing that can definitely help both sides, the Commanders and Eric Bieniemy, in his goals of being a possible NFL head coach at some point in his career. So yeah, that's it for the Commanders offensive coordinator update this week. Also, we got to talk about this as well. Compensatory pick. Compensatory picks. I can't pronounce that for some reason. Compensatory picks this year for the Washington Commanders in this upcoming 2023 NFL drafts. I saw this thing on Twitter. This is a guy that he like does a bunch of math and stuff with like how compensatory picks work in this upcoming draft and how teams get awarded them. And JP Finley quote tweeted it, so I'm guessing it's a reliable source because Finley quote tweeted it. But yeah, basically this was saying that the Commanders are projected to get a 3rd round pick and a 6th round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. And yeah, that's great because I like more draft picks. I especially like high draft picks, like that 3rd round pick, which will come probably in the top 110 picks, which is great because yeah, that means we can get another possibly day one starter in the 3rd round just because we lost. Again, this 3rd round pick is because we lost Brendan Sheriff to Jacksonville last offseason, and the 6th round pick is losing Tim Settle to Buffalo last offseason. So yeah, that is what the projected compensatory picks. I'm really struggling pronouncing that for some reason. Compensatory picks are for the Washington Commanders, a 3rd and a 6th, which I'm, again, very happy with. Sheriff is a great player. The highest compensatory pick you can get is a 3rd round pick. They don't go higher than that. So it's basically the highest pick or highest round pick we could get in Sheriff, which is great news to hear as well. Speaking of the NFL draft, Mel Kiper Jr., the lead draft analyst for ESPN, released his 1.0 mock draft early last week. I want to say it was last Wednesday, maybe last Thursday. But in it, with a 16th overall pick, he has the Washington Commanders selecting Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Jones is 6'4". I've already scouted him. He's a great player, great ball player at offensive tackle. But I do want to say I did give him like a mid to late first round grade on him. So technically, you could say that this is maybe a reach if you're going off of my projections of how or where Broderick Jones should go. It's a little bit of a reach for the Commanders, but also offensive tackle is a position of need and a position of dire need for the Washington Commanders, as we need to completely rebuild this offensive line this upcoming offseason. So again, I wouldn't really call this a stretch or reach because the Commanders, even though Jones might not be worth a 16th overall pick, the Commanders really need a new offensive tackle. And with already, I believe Skoronski was probably already off the board at this time. Yeah, Paris Johnson was already off the board. Skoronski was off the board. He went 7 to the Raiders, and then Paris Johnson went 11 to the Tennessee Titans. So Broderick Jones, next best guy. He went 16 to the Commanders. But I do want to say, I feel there's a lot of depth in this offensive tackle class that we could probably get, especially with the compensatory pick in the third round that we possibly will be getting. There's a lot of things that we can do. There's Darnell Wright down the board. There's some other great offensive tackles, Blake Freeland down the board as well, that we could possibly get, and they could become day one starters. So again, there isn't really anyone that is like a big time offensive tackle that you really should be taking in the top 10. I would say Skoronski, maybe. Jones, I would not say so. And then Paris Johnson, in my opinion, is not worth a first round draft pick at all. I think he's worth a third round pick probably, but again, he's probably going to go in the first round because of his athletic traits. So, but yeah, other guys on the board were Joey Porter Jr., the cornerback out of Penn State, who went 17 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Christian Gonzalez went one pick later to the Detroit Lions. He's a cornerback out of Oregon. And then Brian Branch, I believe, fell all the way to a team very later on. Yes, he fell all the way to the Eagles at the 30th overall pick. He's a safety out of Alabama. I would be fine with the 16th overall pick selecting Christian Gonzalez, who I think Gonzalez is a top 5 talent in this class, maybe a little bit out of the top 5 once I finish off my big boards this year. But again, he's a top 10 talent in this class. Joey Porter Jr., I haven't gotten to him yet, but he seems like a great cornerback too that can come in and be that corner one for a team like Washington, who also needs a corner as well. But again, we have Kendall Fuller, who is very underappreciated this year, in my opinion. We have Benjamin St-Juste. If St-Juste can stay healthy, he's going to be a great cornerback in this league as well. We do need a nickel corner and a slot corner. So basically the same thing. But we do need a nickel corner. So I don't know what we're going to do. Again, there's a lot of depth as well in this defensive back class. We can get a starter probably day 3 as well, or late day 2. So I don't really have a problem. Again, the positions that the Commanders need this year, I feel there's a lot of players in this class, especially down the board, in the defensive back position and in a corner position as well. Defensive back or in an offensive tackle position as well, that we can really get in the second, third, fourth round, possibly even fifth round. We could get a day 1 starter, which is just great news to hear, because Washington, we have holes on this roster, and the draft will definitely be a big place to fill the holes in this roster. But yeah, that's it for the Mel Kiper mock draft. I don't know when his second mock draft is going to come out, but probably in a month or so, because he usually only does 4 or 5 usually. Some other guys I've seen in other mock drafts, Landon Washington, Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon. I don't think Devon Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois, will fall that far. He's a very good instinctual cornerback. I don't think he's going to fall over to 16. I'd be pretty surprised. But Christian Gonzalez could definitely be a guy that I could see fall to 16, and I would, in a heartbeat, I would sprint to the podium and draft Christian Gonzalez before like Ron goes and selects a running back again or something. So, Christian Gonzalez is a guy that I really liked. I've also seen some other offensive tackles like Paris Johnson go to 16 for the Washington Commanders. But yeah, 16 is a very interesting spot for the Commanders overall, as we could also trade down a few picks as well and pick up an extra third round pick, an extra fourth round pick, possibly even an extra second round pick, depending on how far we trade down. And I would not be opposed to that either. depending on where the board falls. So yeah, that's it for the Mel Kiper mock draft and NFL draft update. All right, let's move on to the Commanders fan cruise. We have an update on that. The cruise was supposed to be with Washington legends and alumni. It was announced last offseason by the Washington Commanders. It's supposed to be with guys like Doug Williams and some other alumni as well. But yeah, it has now been canceled. It was supposed to take off March 23rd, I want to say, March 24th, somewhere in late March. But now, yep, it's been canceled. Here's the official statement, by the way, for that the Washington Commanders put out. Out of deep concern for our fans' experience, we are in the process of canceling the fan cruise because of significant changes made by First Class Cruises. First Class Cruises is the cruise line. Oh, I don't know the cruise line, but like the cruise agency that they use to basically organize the entire thing. But yeah, so there's significant changes made by First Class Cruises to the original offering, including cruise line, destinations, and dates. Now, I do want to point out the St. Louis Cardinals, the MLB team, has done a similar thing with the same company that the Commanders are working with, and it just happened. The cruise literally just came back from the Key West, which is pretty cool. It happened from January 20th, January 18th, maybe, all the way to January 28th. So, yeah, I don't really know what happened with the fan cruise and the Washington Commanders. I don't know if it was because of this the entire owner situation. I don't know if it was on the Commander side or on the cruise agency side, which out of the Commander statement, it seems like it's on the cruise agency side. But again, we never know because they like to hate on pretty much anyone that says a bad thing about the team. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the fan cruise stuff. Wasn't really a big update, but I do want to point it out because I did think it was a little bit interesting that the Commanders have canceled it about a month and a half away from when it was supposed to depart. And for the last thing on the agenda this week is time for the college all-star games. We've already had some already happen and some are going to happen. Some are in the middle of happening right now as a bunch of practices have already started for the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is on Thursday, the Senior Bowl, which is on Saturday, and the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl actually happened last Saturday. So we're already in the midst of the college all-star game season. If you don't know what the college all-star games are, it's basically a place where a bunch of the top prospects can go. They play an extra game. They have practices throughout the entire week, and basically a place where a bunch of NFL scouts can go and watch top prospects play up against other top prospects, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that is what's happening this week. No first round projected quarterbacks this year will be playing in any of the all-star games. A lot of the top prospects that are probably day 2 picks that are, of course, seniors will play in the Reese Senior Bowl. And this is the first time since 7 years, I think I saw a stat, that no projected first-round quarterback will be playing in the Senior Bowl, which is a little bit interesting. But there's still a bunch of other guys that I'd like to watch throughout all these games and watch throughout all these practices as well. I did talk about it a little bit in a past episode. 4 Commanders assistant coaches will be coaching in the Senior Bowl, so that is also good. The Commanders scouts will be at all 3 of, or we're at, I guess, if we're talking about the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, but they're at the Shrine Bowl right now, and they're at the Senior Bowl. They're interviewing prospects. All 152 prospects at the Senior Bowl are going to be interviewed by every single team, which is pretty crazy, but it's great because instead of in the past, they've had it where like teams can request to talk with other like prospects and stuff, and it was kind of weird because you had to make sure and try and keep a track of the list of every prospect that the Commanders that the Commanders went and interviewed at the Senior Bowl and at the East-West Shrine Bowl. But now, since the Commanders just interview everyone and every team just interviews every prospect at the Senior Bowl, we don't have to keep track of that, which is great because I think there's a lot of guys, especially on day 3, that the Commanders could be selecting, and a position that I think we could not really shock some people, but a position that we could definitely possibly draft on day 3 is a quarterback. Because if we go with Sam Howell as a starter for the 2023 season, which I still think we should, I don't think we need to trade up for a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I don't think it's worth it right now, especially with where this team is at. I don't think we need a rookie that coming in. Sam Howell, we drafted him last year. He's shown flashes. That's good. But we do need a backup quarterback because if we're not going to bring Taylor Heineke back, we need to bring in either a veteran like a Jimmy Garoppolo and on a cheap deal, or we need to bring in a rookie day 3 pick. And even then, we still might select a guy in the 6th or 7th round for a third string possibly option. So yeah, here's some guys that are playing at the Senior Bowl that we could possibly draft on day 3. BYU's Jaron Hall is a guy I'm really starting to like. Has a great accuracy. He can throw it downfield. I'm really starting to like him, and I definitely think he could go in the 4th, 3rd round. And if he doesn't, if he gets past round 5, I would also select him in a heartbeat because that man has traits, and as a dual threat quarterback as well. And he can also catch the ball for some reason as well, as he had like 2 receiving touchdowns this year, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, that's a guy I really like. Houston's Clayton Tune will also be at the Senior Bowl. TCU's Max Duggan, pretty much the definition of a college quarterback. I'm not really sure how much he's going to succeed in the NFL, but Max Duggan's also going to be at the Senior Bowl. And then Tennessee's Hendon Hooker, who will not be practicing at the Senior Bowl. But there was a big update this week. Hendon Hooker, of course, one of the best college quarterbacks last season before tearing his ACL. He is 25 years old, which is definitely a little bit older for a quarterback, especially one that could possibly go high, which we've seen in the past with guys like Brandon Weeden, who's 28, still going in the 1st round. But Hendon Hooker, he's already off crutches after tearing his ACL on November 21st, I believe. He's already off crutches. He's going to be able to start running next week. And the rumor is that he's going to be ready for training camp, which is just insane. And if he actually is, I know NFL teams will be talking with him and talking about his injuries and stuff during the Senior Bowl. And if he actually is having a very speedy recovery right now, he could maybe sneak into being a day 2 pick. I don't think he's worth it, but he could sneak in being a day 2 pick. And I think that could definitely be pretty crazy for a lot of teams, especially the team that will select him. I think the dialogue around it is going to be not so great, but I'd like to keep my eye on him, especially this week during the Senior Bowl as well. So yeah. And last thing here, we're going to be having on next week or the week after that Ryan Fowler, who hosts the Commanding the Huddle podcast and is a draft analyst for the Draft Network. He'll be joining the show to talk about the Senior Bowl, as he is currently in Mobile, Alabama right now, watching all these prospects perform and watching all these prospects practice. He's going to be telling us who he thinks performed great, who he thinks underperformed during the Senior Bowl and during the Senior Bowl practices, and some guys that Washington could be looking to draft, as last year the Commanders did draft 5 guys that participated in the Senior Bowl. So Washington definitely looking at these players in the Senior Bowl, and definitely there's definitely some guys in the Senior Bowl this year that Washington's going to draft. I am like 99% sure that that's going to happen. So that's something to keep an eye out for in the next few weeks as well. But yeah, that's it. Hope you guys like the new graphics and stuff and the new way we're going to be doing things. But yeah, that's it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.